Hello and welcome back to our channel. I'm Colleen and this is Our Blessed Life, and today I am doing an end of the year check-in for first grade. So my daughter Sophie is in first grade this year. She has special needs. She has a rare genetic condition called SETD5. And so what I'm gonna do is go over with you all the curriculum that we used this year and kind of talk about some of the different things that we did to make that curriculum work, where we had to make changes and that sort of thing. I will be putting a video out in a few weeks on what we intend to do for her for second grade. First, we did the Good and the Beautiful handwriting. She did level 1. This went really well for her. Handwriting is a struggle. For Sophie. She doesn't have as much hand control. That's just part of her special need. However, this program, it doesn't give too much on each page. I do feel like she had improvement during the year. I'll kind of see if I can get that to focus. It also has a place at the bottom where you can color and draw for every single lesson, and she really enjoyed that. So this was definitely a win for us. We will definitely continue using the Good and the Beautiful handwriting. So this worked out really, really well this year for us. We also used Explode the Code, and this was also level 1. This was probably a little bit harder for her than it would have been for a neurotypical child. I feel like this is supposed to be more of an independent type of activity, and it required a good bit of hands-on. I felt like this was more of a time filler. I do think it did review phonics well, but I'm not sure we're gonna do this next time. I think I would rather spend more time on her core language arts. But she actually does enjoy this book, and I think for most kids, this is something good to consider. So this is Explode the Code level 1. I'll have links to all of these products in the description box below. Either at the original website or on Amazon or wherever you can find them if you want to look them up and check them out a little closer. Next was her regular language arts curriculum, and we actually used three. We have 3 different language arts curriculum choices this year. We started out with what I wanted to use for her, which was the Good and the Beautiful Level K. So if you are familiar with the Good and the Beautiful Level K, it is a pretty difficult curriculum. A lot of people would say the Level K is a little bit ahead of kindergarten level compared to a lot of other curriculum. This would definitely feel more like a first grade level, and that definitely impacted us with this. So prior to using this, the year before, when Sophie was in kindergarten, we did the Good and the Beautiful Primer K, and I think there was also our Level K Primer, and I think there was also an extension that came with that, or that we could get in addition to that, and that worked really, really well. That was mostly like a phonics review, but this got very hands-on very quickly, and the progression into reading sentences came very fast. So basically maybe around November or December, we kind of got to a point where I really just couldn't move any further in this book with her. And so I had to kind of drop back and do something else. And so what we moved to was Master Books Foundations Phonics. But Foundations Phonics from Master Books, we absolutely loved it. It worked really well for Sophie. It was a very good bridge product for us. And what I mean by that is that even though it kind of starts over with letter sounds, it also did a good bit of work in sight words. It also did, it also had them reading fairly quickly with simple words and simple sentences. And so it was the bridge that we needed for Sophie. So she finished Foundations Phonics honestly fairly quickly. Like they have it to where you can do it as all of kindergarten or the first half of first grade. And I think she finished that book probably in about 4 months. So maybe even 3 months. So it was less than a semester she finished it. So that worked out really well. And once we finished Foundations Phonics, we went into the next book with Master Books, which is called, it used to be called Basic Language Skills, but now it's Language Lessons for a living education level 1. So that one, I actually have printed off and put into a notebook. I do have a flip through of that and a do a lesson with me. I'm gonna go ahead and link that up top here for language lessons for living education level 1. This book also worked pretty well. Sophie got through about 8 weeks of this, and then it kind of got too hard too quickly, and we had to put pause on this. And so when that happened, which was very close to the end of the school year, what I did was I went back to the Good and the Beautiful level K. And that was kind of at the perfect point for her. And so we started that back up around, I wanna say maybe lesson like 25. And she's doing really, really well in this now. And so my plan is to use the Good and the Beautiful and language lessons for living education together. So these two books are a very similar level. However, she is kind of more towards the beginning of this book and more towards the middle of the other book. So the Good and the Beautiful has 120 lessons, and then language lessons for living education, I think, has 90, because this is meant to be done. You can do this in half of a year. So you could do foundations phonics the beginning of the year, and then you could do language lessons. We were unable to get the physical product. It just wasn't out when I needed it. So I did the PDF version and printed it out. And so that's why we have it in a notebook like this. Both of these worked really, really well. They both worked so well, and I think that with Sophie's learning challenges, I think we are probably always going to be in a situation where we can go a little bit and then we get stuck, and then we can kind of fall back to something else and kind of get caught up because it's teaching a little bit different way. And there are different words, there's different sight words and things like that. And so I'm planning to have Sophie continue and finish both of these. That's what I'm planning right now. If you had to ask me personally which one I prefer, like for me, I prefer the Good and the Beautiful. I like both of them a lot, but I prefer the Good and the Beautiful. I just think the Good and the Beautiful is a little bit more robust. Every day is a little bit different. And one thing I don't really like a whole lot as far as language lessons for living education, I'm not real big on that dictionary page, because I feel like asking them to draw a picture, write a definition, and write the word is a lot at that level. And also I think some of the words are very challenging. So to me, that was something that I felt like was a little bit wasted on Sophie. It was just like a day that we could have been doing something else that had more value. That's just my personal opinion. Again, those are the two language arts programs that I like the most right now, especially for Sophie. And like I said, right now, I'm planning to kind of use both of these just to help her moving forward. And I'm also planning to buy both of them for next year. And I actually already have level 2, and I'm just gonna kind of see over time which one works better. But for now, so we kind of, you know, we start, we're able to move, we hit a brick wall, and it seems to be working well that when we hit that brick wall, we can just move back to the other program and just kind of start where we stopped before and move forward, and then kind of go back and forth. I know that sounds like a very strange way to teach language arts, but for some reason it just works well for Sophie. So that's what we've been doing. But again, I like both of those programs. They are both really good. They both take about the same amount of time per day. I would say at this level, about 30 minutes or so. And I definitely feel that the language lessons for living education level 1 is very equivalent to the Good and the Beautiful level K, in my opinion, as far as the activities they're having them do, the words that they're expecting them to know, and the overall skill level. Again, I don't know whether that means that language lessons for living education is a little bit lower, or if this is a little bit higher. I suspect this one's a little bit higher, but in other words, a little bit higher than kindergarten level. So anyway, that's kind of my 2 cents on those. But both of these, I feel like both of these were wins for Sophie this year, and I'm planning to stick with these. Next was math, and in math we had a completely different situation. We started out the year in math with the Good and the Beautiful Level 1. Sophie did successfully complete the Good and the Beautiful Level K math last year, and we really, really did like it. This program though is very parent intensive. So there's not a lot of pre-planning to do. I would call it open and go, but there's just a lot of time. The lesson takes a lot of time. I would say if you do everything that it says to do, it's gonna take at least an hour to do, especially if your kid has any struggles whatsoever. If they are doing really, really well in math, you may find that you can speed it up just a little bit. Sophie was able to go through lesson 14 in this. There's actually 2 parts. They're pretty thick. It's a very robust class. So math course, book 1 and book 2. There's also a manipulatives box that you get with this. I believe you have to pay for that separately unless there's like a bundle that you can do. So that's a lot of math. We did not make it very far in this math program. So we started out first grade, finishing up maybe the last 15 or so lessons from the Good and the Beautiful Level K. That went really well. We moved into Level 1. That went really well for the first few lessons. And then it was just kind of fast and furious, and Sophie just could not keep up. So we stopped this after lesson 14. And this was kind of my first Master Books experience, was moving to Math Lessons for Living Education Level 1. This is definitely not on the same level as the Good and the Beautiful Level 1. Again, I would say that this is at least half a grade level lower than what they're doing in in the Good and the Beautiful Level 1 math, which was good for Sophie. She just was not able to move that fast. So this kind of had some more of the basic skills, some things in here you might think were more kindergarten level. I know some people that do Math Lessons for Living Education like to bump their child up a grade level, but this is what they use for Level 1. Sophie made it all the way through this whole book until we stopped at lesson 30. There are 36 lessons, and the way this is set up is you do 1 lesson a week for 36 weeks. So we made it through lesson 29, and so her next day to do would be lesson 146 out of 180. So it's got 180 days in here. Now, we simply stopped this just because school was over. Like, we finished our school year, so we stopped math. We will definitely finish this entire book before we move on, and we do plan to stick with Math Lessons for Living Education, and we'll move into Level 2. This is a good fit for Sophie. It is more gentle and easier. Like I said, it's probably a little bit lower in grade level. I know not all math curriculum, like across the board, kind of line up perfectly. Some introduce certain concepts earlier, some do it later, so it's really hard to say what really first grade math is, because if you line up a bunch of first grade math textbooks together, they're all going to be different in some way. But this was compared to the only other thing I've ever used with Sophie, which is the Good and the Beautiful. This was definitely a lower level, but that was better for her. That's what she needed. So this was a much better fit for her. And she has some days where she knows things, and then she has days where she's having difficulty recalling. So this was definitely a fit for her. If you have a child that struggles in math at all, this might be something to look at, especially for the younger levels, to see if you can kind of help them start to understand math a little bit better. As far as the parent involvement in this, you're definitely going to be doing math side by side. However, on the whole, these lessons are much faster than the Good and the Beautiful. So you can kind of take that however you want to. For Sophie, that seems to be better. I would say that math takes us now between 15 minutes and 30 minutes, and before it took us at least an hour every day. So Math Lessons for Living Education Level 1 is what we wound up our year with. And we'll finish this before moving into Level 2. Okay, so next is Bible. We started out the year using More Than Words. This is also published by Master Books, written by Rebecca Spooner. I really like this book, and I do intend to go back to this book when Sophie's a little bit older, but for this year, it just ended up being too much. I had to take something off of our plates just to get through the regular curriculum, and this was what I chose to remove. And it's not because I don't think Bible is important for Sophie in Sophie's curriculum, but when we moved to Master Books, there was so much Bible in basically all of what she was doing that I felt like we were really covering Bible well, and this was just an extra thing that I could take off. I do intend to bring this back. It's probably not going to be next year because of the amount of handwriting and tracing in here. There's a lot of where you can see where they're going to be writing. This is, I think, grade level K through 2. There's a good bit of handwriting in here, especially if you have a kindergartner. So I'm probably looking at this maybe for Sophie in 3rd grade. Next is history, and for history we used Abeka's My America, My World, and we really loved this little book. It's a very small, short book. It was engaging, it was colorful, there's a lot of pictures in here. We just kind of broke it up by the day and just read a little section. We did this about once a week, and it was just enough. This was perfect. I think these little Abeka readers for like kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade, I think these are precious. And Sophie really, really loved it. So this was good. In our morning time, we also did The Good and the Beautiful History together with her sister Katie, who's in high school, and she enjoyed that as well, but this was more on her level. And so this was definitely a win for us, for Sophie, for social studies or history. So for science, I'm going to go ahead and qualify this and say we are a science family, and I do recognize that we did too much science this year. I'm just going to throw that out there. And with that being said, I'm going to show you what we did for science for Sophie. All right, so first of all, we did the arthropod unit study from The Good and the Beautiful. We only did this through her co-op. So every time we had co-op, which was every other week until the coronavirus situation happened, she would get this during co-op. So that worked well for us, and this worked well in our co-op. So I definitely love The Good and the Beautiful Science. I didn't use this for all of her science because I think these are a little bit above her head, and I'm kind of holding these off for a little bit later in elementary school and possibly early middle school. We homeschool year-round, and we also did The Good and the Beautiful Safety Unit. This was a really good unit, especially for a younger child, like kindergarten, 1st grade, 2nd grade. This is one that's not going to be above their head. We enjoyed this one, and we did this one over the summer. So this was one that we did and finished over the summer with Sophie. This was definitely a win as well. The primary science that we chose for the year was Discovering God's World by Abeka. This again is not a very big one. It's a science reader. It's very colorful. It does have activities every once in a while in the book. There's not a ton of writing, but there's a few little things in here where maybe you draw lines or fill in the blanks or whatever. It's got a few little activities and experiments. She really loved this book. This was definitely a win. We really only had to do this like once a week. There just wasn't a whole lot here. I wouldn't say it's like super robust if you're a science family like we are. So once I switched to Master Books for language arts and math, I decided at the same time to go ahead and try their science. I wanted to kind of dip my toe in that water and just see what their science was like, because we had never used it before. And so at that time, I also purchased Adventures in Creation. Sophie absolutely loved this book. Like, she loved it. There were experiments in here and little activities. There's a lot of pages that you can pull out, and it has just different activities to do. I've pulled most of those out at this point. We didn't do every single lesson in here. I think we skipped about 5 just because we didn't start this until later on in the year. So the way the book works is it schedules science 3 days a week. In my opinion, you could easily sit down and do the entire week in one day in about 30 minutes or so. So it's not, it doesn't take a lot of time. The book is set up where it talks about the 6 days of creation, and then all the science that it gives you is based on when it happened in the 6 days of creation. So it reminds me of some of the stuff that we did in Abeka's kindergarten program, as far as like the Bible and the science that we did in that. So it's a really sweet book, and we did definitely enjoy this one. I highly recommend Adventures in Creation if you're looking for, this is level 1, and they call this first and second grade level, I believe. I think this would easily work for kindergarten as well. The other science that we used for Abeka, this was listed as first grade. So they do theirs by, instead of like by age range or grade range, they do theirs by grade. But we enjoyed both of these. I asked Sophie which one she liked better, and she liked the Adventures in Creation better. Okay, so that is all of the curriculum that we used with Sophie this year. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments below, or let me know what you used for first grade this year, and if any of it worked out or didn't work out and that kind of thing, just to let people know if they're looking for first grade curriculum. I think that would definitely be helpful. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
It's gonna be okay, no matter come what may. I'm gonna set things straight tomorrow. I let my worries fade, let them sweep away. There'll be another day.